Meet Amaya Rivers, a brilliant chef whose culinary creations have been delighting Seattle's elite for years, though no one knows her name. Working in the shadows of a luxury restaurant, she watches as another chef takes credit for her masterpieces. But when a powerful businessman tastes her food and recognizes the soul behind it, everything changes. This is a story of hidden talent, unexpected love, and the courage to step into the light. Before we start this story, comment below from where you are watching us. The evening sun cast a golden glow over the Seattle skyline as Amaya Rivers tied her apron around her waist. At 29, she had already spent 10 years in professional kitchens, but most people had never heard her name. Tonight was like any other at Skyline, the luxury rooftop restaurant where she worked. Customers paid $300 per person to enjoy the view and the food, her food, though no one knew it. "Amaya, I need that oxtail ravioli for table 12, shouted Marcus Bennett, the head chef who took all the credit for her creations. "Coming right up," she replied, her hands moving with practiced precision as she plated the dish that had become the restaurant's signature. The kitchen was hot and cramped, nothing like the elegant dining room where Marcus would later stroll among tables, accepting compliments for dishes he hadn't created. Amaya didn't mind the heat or the lack of recognition. She just loved to cook. "You know, one day you should demand your name on the menu," said Tanya, a server who had become Amaya's friend over the past year. Amaya smiled, but shook her head. "The food speaks for itself." "That's enough for me." Tanya rolled her eyes. "Girl, you're too good for this place, too good for Marcus taking credit for your genius." The kitchen door swung open as Tanya left, with Amaya's perfectly plated dishes. In the dining room, a different world existed, one of crystal glasses, white tablecloths, and Seattle's elite. At table 12 sat Dominic Vance, CEO of Pacific Northwest Aviation, hosting dinner for 3 potential clients. At 33, he had built his private jet company from the ground up, earning a reputation as a demanding perfectionist who accepted nothing but excellence. "You'll find our service unmatched," Dominic was saying when the waiter set down their entrees. The conversation paused as they admired the presentation of their food. Dominic cut into the oxtail ravioli, releasing a fragrant steam. He took a bite and froze. The flavors transported him instantly to memories he couldn't place. Comfort, warmth, sophistication all at once. "This is—" he started, but words failed him. His business partners nodded appreciatively, but they didn't seem as affected. They resumed talking about contract details, while Dominic remained silent, savoring each bite, searching for the mystery behind the dish. When the restaurant manager passed by to check on their table, Dominic stopped him. "Who made this?" he asked, gesturing to his nearly empty plate. The manager smiled with practiced charm. "Our chef team works together to create every dish." Dominic shook his head. "No, I want to know specifically who created this ravioli." "That would be Chef Marcus Bennett. He's won several—" "I'd like to meet him, tonight." The manager hesitated but nodded. "Of course, Mr. Vance, I'll see if he's available after your meal." Back in the kitchen, Amaya was preparing desserts when the manager burst in. "Marcus, Dominic Vance wants to meet you. The aviation guy, worth millions." Marcus quickly removed his slightly dirty apron and smoothed his hair. "How did I look?" "Like $1,000,000, as always," the manager assured him. He loved the oxtail ravioli. Amaya smiled to herself. That dish was her grandmother's recipe, reimagined with techniques she'd perfected over years. The sauce alone took 3 days to develop its rich flavor. 20 minutes later, Marcus returned to the kitchen, looking irritated. "What happened?" asked the manager. "Rich guy thinks he knows food," Marcus muttered. "Asked me detailed questions about the ravioli, how I made the sauce, what inspired it." He glanced at Amaya. He wasn't satisfied with my answers. The dining room manager appeared at the kitchen door. "Chef, Mr. Vance is still asking questions. He says he knows you didn't make that dish." Marcus's face reddened. "Tell him I'm busy. He's a major investor in 3 restaurants downtown. We can't just dismiss him." The kitchen fell silent. Everyone knew Amaya created most of the menu items, but no one ever mentioned it openly. "Fine," Marcus finally said. "Amaya, go out there and talk to him about your ravioli. Just don't, Don't what?" she asked, though she knew what he meant. "Don't take credit. Don't outshine him. Just handle it professionally," Marcus replied. Amaya untied her apron and ran a hand over her curls, which were pulled back in a simple tie. She didn't have time to change out of her kitchen clothes or fix her appearance. Not that it mattered. This was just another customer with questions. When she stepped into the dining room, The noise and clinking of glasses hit her ears. She rarely left the kitchen during service. The manager pointed toward table 12, where 3 men in suits were preparing to leave, and one remained seated, swirling the last of his wine. Dominic Vance looked up as she approached. He had sharp features, deep brown eyes, and an intensity that made Amaya pause for a moment. This was a man used to getting answers. "Mr. Vance," she said, "I understand you had questions about one of our dishes." He studied her, taking in her flour-dusted chef's coat and the slight shine on her face from the kitchen heat. "You made the ravioli," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, I did." "And you don't run the kitchen?" Amaya chose her words carefully. "I'm part of the team." "That's not what I asked." His voice wasn't unkind, just direct. "Why is someone else taking credit for your work?" She shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Vance, I'm happy with my position. Are you? Because that dish wasn't just food, it was—" He paused, searching for the right words. It was like tasting a story. There was history in those flavors. Something in his words touched her. Few people understood what cooking meant to her, that each dish carried memories of her grandmother's kitchen, of Sunday family dinners, of her mother's hands guiding hers as she learned to knead dough. "The recipe is based on something my grandmother used to make," she admitted. "I knew it," he said, a smile warming his face. "Food like that doesn't come from technique alone. It comes from somewhere deeper." He extended his hand. "I'm Dominic Vance." "Amaya Rivers," she replied, shaking his hand briefly. "Amaya," he repeated, as if testing how her name felt. "Why haven't I heard of you? A chef who cooks like that should be known." She shrugged. "I just cook. The recognition isn't important to me." "It should be," he said firmly. "Talent like yours shouldn't hide in the background." From across the room she noticed Marcus watching them, his expression growing more concerned by the second. "I should get back to the kitchen," she said. "We're still in service." Dominic nodded, but before she could turn away, he asked, "Do you create most of the menu here?" She hesitated, then nodded slightly. "That's what I thought." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "If you ever want to cook somewhere that values your talent properly, call me." Amaya took the card automatically, but didn't look at it. "Thank you for enjoying the food, Mr. Vance." As she walked back to the kitchen, she could feel his eyes following her. Something about his directness had caught her off guard. People didn't usually see through the restaurant's carefully constructed facade. "What did he want?" Marcus demanded when she returned. "Just had questions about the preparation," she replied, tucking the business card into her pocket. "Nothing important." The next night, Dominic Vance returned to Skyline, and the night after that. Each time he came alone, sat at a small table near the kitchen, and ordered whatever special Amaya had created that day. He never asked to see her again, but each night he left a handwritten note with his bill. The first simply read, "Extraordinary flavors, thank you." The second, "The duck with cherry reduction reminded me of a summer in France. How did you know?" By the fifth note, Amaya found herself looking forward to his messages. "Your food speaks when words fail. It's the most honest conversation I've had in years." On the seventh night, Marcus confronted her in the kitchen. "What's going on with you and Vance?" he demanded. "He's here every night, writing notes. The staff is talking." "There's nothing going on," Amaya insisted. "He just appreciates good food." "Well, he's asking questions about who creates what on the menu. The owners are getting nervous." Amaya felt a chill. The restaurant industry was her life. If she gained a reputation as difficult or demanding, it could end her career. "I haven't said anything to him about the menu credits," she assured Marcus. "Keep it that way," he warned. "Remember who gave you this opportunity when no one else would." That night, Dominic's note was different. "I'm not just full, I'm changed. Please let me know your name because I can't stop tasting it in my mind. DV." Amaya read it twice, then slipped it into her pocket alongside the others. She knew she should ignore it, keep her head down and continue as she always had. But something about his persistence had cracked open a door she'd kept firmly shut, the desire to be seen, not just for her cooking, but for herself. After her shift ended at midnight, she changed into her street clothes and headed for the employee exit. Outside, leaning against a sleek black car, stood Dominic Vance. "Mr. Vance," she said, surprised. "Are you waiting for someone?" "Just hoping," he replied with a slight smile. "I thought you might come out this way." "That seems a lot like stalking," she said, though she wasn't actually afraid. He straightened up. "You're right. I apologize. I just wanted to talk to you away from the restaurant. I can leave if you're uncomfortable." Amaya considered him for a moment. There was something genuine about him that didn't match his powerful businessman image. "There's a late-night coffee shop around the corner," she said finally. "We can talk there." The coffee shop was nearly empty at this hour. They took a table by the window, steam rising from their mugs in the cool night air. "Why are you really here, Mr. Vance?" Amaya asked directly. "I'm not a fantasy. You like to dish. That doesn't mean you see me." He looked at her thoughtfully before answering. "I've dined in restaurants around the world, Miss Rivers. I've had meals prepared by chefs with multiple Michelin stars, but I've never tasted food that made me feel the way yours does." "Feel what?" she asked. "Connected," he said simply. "Your food carries emotion. When I taste it, I'm not just experiencing flavors. I'm experiencing you. Your history, your passion." He paused. "I didn't just taste food, I tasted memory, longing, confidence. And when I saw you, I realized why. You've been giving the world everything, quietly. I'd like to make noise for you now, if you'll let me." Amaya stirred her coffee, buying time. "What exactly are you proposing? Let me help you open your own restaurant. No more hiding in someone else's kitchen. No more watching another chef take credit for your creations." She laughed softly. "Just like that? You don't even know if I can run a kitchen." "I know talent when I see it," he said confidently. "And I know people who would invest in you sight unseen, based solely on my recommendation." "Why would you do that for a stranger?" His expression turned serious. "Because real talent deserves recognition. Because I've spent my life building things, and I know potential when I see it." He leaned forward slightly. "And because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since I tasted your food." The honesty in his voice caught her by surprise. Amaya had spent so long in the background that being the center of someone's attention felt foreign, almost uncomfortable. "I need to think about it," she said finally. He nodded. "Of course. Take all the time you need." He pulled out another business card and wrote a number on the back. "This is my personal cell. When you're ready to talk, call me, day or night." As they left the coffee shop, the Seattle drizzle had turned into a steady rain. Dominic offered to drive her home, but Amaya declined. "I like the rain," she said. "Helps me think." He watched her for a moment, then nodded. "Good night, Amaya Rivers." "Good night, Mr. Vance." "Dominic," he corrected gently. "Good night, Dominic," she repeated, testing his name the way he had tested hers earlier. As she walked away through the rain-slicked streets, Amaya felt something shifting inside her, a quiet ambition she had suppressed for years, suddenly awakening under the attention of a man who seemed to see right through her carefully constructed walls. What she didn't know was that Dominic Vance never made offers lightly, and he never gave up once he set his mind on something, or someone. And he had definitely set his mind on Amaya Rivers, the chef whose food had somehow touched his soul. Back in her small apartment, Amaya laid out the notes he had written, reading them again in sequence. They revealed a man paying attention, not just to the food, but to the person behind it. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a different future, one where she didn't hide in the shadows of someone else's glory. She picked up her phone and looked at his number, not ready to call yet, but no longer certain she could remain invisible. Something had changed tonight, something important, and it had all started with the taste of her food on his lips. The rain pattered against her windows as she closed her eyes, remembering the intensity in his gaze when he said he wanted to make noise for her. No one had ever fought for her before. No one had ever suggested she deserved more than what she had settled for. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was just the beginning. 3 days passed before Amaya called Dominic. During that time, he didn't return to the restaurant, but flowers arrived at the kitchen with a simple note. "No pressure, just thinking of you." The other kitchen staff teased her mercilessly. "Secret admirer?" asked Tanya when she spotted the arrangement. "Just someone who liked my food," Amaya replied, trying to sound casual. "Girl, nobody sends flowers like that for food. That man is interested in the chef, not just the cooking." Amaya focused on chopping vegetables, avoiding Tanya's knowing smile. "It's not like that." "Well, it should be. When was the last time you went on a real date? All you do is work." It was true. Since culinary school, Amaya's life had revolved around kitchens. She'd sacrificed relationships, vacations, even family gatherings to pursue her passion. The idea of adding anything else to her life seemed impossible, and yet Dominic's offer kept playing in her mind. That night after closing, Amaya sat on her small balcony overlooking the city lights and finally dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. "Amaya, I was hoping you'd call. I've been thinking about your offer," she said, skipping the small talk. "And? I want to know more." What exactly would opening my own place involve? I don't have startup money. I don't have investors. All I have is recipes and experience. That's more than enough, Dominic said. I know a space that's becoming available next month in Pike Place. The owner is a friend who wants a quality restaurant there, not another tourist trap. We could look at it together. Amaya's heart raced. Pike Place was prime real estate, the kind of location most chefs only dreamed about. Why are you doing this? She asked again. You barely know me. There was a pause before he answered. I recognize something in you that reminds me of myself years ago. Talent that needs the right opportunity. Another pause. And selfishly, I want to keep eating your food. She laughed softly. At least you're honest. Always. Can we meet tomorrow? I can show you the space. Amaya thought about her schedule. I have Sunday brunch service, but I'm off by 3. I'll pick you up at 3:30. Text me your address. After they hung up, Amaya sat looking at the city lights, a mixture of excitement and fear swirling in her stomach. Was she really considering this? Leaving the security of Skyline for an uncertain venture with a man she barely knew? The next day dragged by. Marcus was in one of his moods, criticizing everything and everyone. When he knocked over a sauce Amaya had spent hours perfecting, her patience finally snapped. That was for the special tonight, she said, her voice tight with anger. Then you'd better make it again, hadn't you? He replied coldly. As she started over, Tanya slipped into the kitchen. What's his problem today? Who knows? Amaya whispered back. Maybe he heard about your flowers, or your visitor after hours. Amaya froze. What do you mean? Someone told him about you meeting with Dominic Vance after your shift the other night, Tanya explained. He's been on the phone with the owners all morning. Great. Just what she needed. By the time 3 o'clock arrived, Amaya was exhausted and on edge. She changed quickly in the employee bathroom, replacing her chef's whites with jeans and a simple blue blouse. She was halfway to the exit when Marcus called her name. We need to talk, he said, blocking her path. I'm off the clock, Marcus. Whatever it is can wait until tomorrow. His face hardened. I heard you're meeting with Vance again. Are you planning to leave Skyline? I don't know what you're talking about, she lied. Don't play dumb, Amaya. You know how this industry works. Loyalty matters. She felt a surge of anger. Loyalty, like taking credit for my recipes, like presenting my food as yours to critics and food bloggers. His expression darkened. I gave you a job when no one else would. I took a chance on you when you had nothing but a culinary degree and attitude. And I've repaid that by working 16-hour days for 5 years without complaint, she shot back. I think we're even. If you leave, I'll make sure everyone knows you're difficult to work with. Ungrateful, unprofessional. The threat hung in the air between them. In the tight-knit culinary world, reputation was everything. Excuse me, came a deep voice from behind Marcus. I believe Ms. Rivers has an appointment. They both turned to see Dominic standing in the hallway, impeccably dressed in casual clothes that still managed to look expensive. His expression was pleasant, but his eyes were hard as they locked onto Marcus. This is a private conversation, Marcus said. Not anymore, Dominic replied easily. And threatening an employee's reputation because they're exploring other opportunities seems highly unprofessional. He stepped closer. I wonder what the Seattle restaurant community would think about that. Marcus's face flushed with anger, but he stepped aside. This isn't over, he muttered to Amaya. Actually, I think it is, Dominic said, offering his arm to Amaya. Shall we? Outside, a sleek black car waited at the curb. Dominic opened the passenger door for her. How much of that did you hear? She asked once they were driving. Enough, he replied. Is he always that charming? Only when he feels threatened, she sighed, which means I probably don't have a job anymore. Good, Dominic said firmly. You deserve better. They drove through downtown Seattle to Pike Place Market, the iconic waterfront marketplace overlooking Puget Sound. Dominic parked and led her through the crowded stalls of fresh fish, flowers, and produce to a corner space with windows facing the water. This is it, he said, unlocking the door. It was a seafood restaurant that closed last month. The owner wants to retire. Amaya stepped inside, instantly assessing the space with a chef's eye. The dining area was intimate but not cramped, seating perhaps 50 people. The real gem was the open kitchen visible from most tables. The equipment is top of line and only 3 years old, Dominic explained. The hood system was replaced last year. Amaya walked into the kitchen, running her hands over the stainless steel counters. It was a beautiful setup, better than Skyline's kitchen in many ways. What would this cost? She asked, not sure she wanted to know the answer. The owner is asking 1.2 million for the business, equipment and 10-year lease. Amaya let out a low whistle. So, completely impossible. Not at all, Dominic said. I would be the primary investor. You would be the chef owner with 20% equity to start, increasing 5% annually until we're equal partners. She stared at him. Why would you do that? It's a terrible business deal for you. Actually, it's not. Restaurants in this location with the right concept don't fail. And you're the right concept. You can't know that. You've had a few meals. I've had enough, he said simply. Besides, my business instincts are rarely wrong. Amaya walked to the windows, looking out at the water. The space was perfect, exactly what she would have chosen if money were no object, but accepting meant being tied to Dominic Vance for years. What's the catch? She asked, turning back to him. No catch. We would be business partners. Nothing more, nothing less. So this isn't about, she hesitated. About what? He prompted. About you being interested in me personally. He met her gaze directly. I am interested in you personally, Amaya. I find you fascinating. But this, he gestured around the restaurant, is separate. It's a business opportunity I'm offering because I believe in your talent. Whether anything develops between us personally is entirely up to you. His honesty was refreshing. No games, no hidden agendas, just straightforward interest and a business proposition. I need to think about it, she said. Of course. Take all the time you need. He handed her a folder. Here's the business plan I've worked up. Numbers, projections, contract terms. Look it over. Have a lawyer review it if you want. As they walked back to the car, Amaya felt lightheaded. Everything was happening so quickly. Yesterday, she was a line cook with secret dreams. Today, she was considering owning her own restaurant. Are you hungry? Dominic asked as they reached his car. Starving, actually, she admitted. I didn't have time to eat during service. I know a place with great food and no pressure. The chef is terrible, though, he said with a smile. 20 minutes later, they were in Dominic's high-rise apartment with a stunning view of the Seattle skyline. His kitchen was a cook's dream, professional-grade equipment in a spacious layout. How you cook? She asked, surprised. Badly, he admitted, pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. But I appreciate good tools. Make yourself comfortable. Amaya settled at the kitchen island, watching as he prepared a simple pasta dish. His movements were confident but not practiced, the actions of someone who could follow a recipe but didn't understand the soul of cooking. Tell me about your grandmother, he said as he worked. You mentioned her recipe inspired the ravioli. The question caught her off guard. How did you remember that? I remember everything about our conversations. Something warm unfurled in Amaya's chest. My grandmother raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 8. She owned a small soul food restaurant in Atlanta. Is that where you learned to cook? Amaya nodded. I spent every day after school in her kitchen. By 12, I was making her recipes by myself. By 15, I was creating my own. Was she supportive of your career? Very. She pushed me to go to culinary school, even though it meant leaving Atlanta. Amaya smiled at the memory. She said my hands were meant for more than just her little restaurant. She sounds wise. She was. She died right after I graduated. Never got to see me work as a professional chef. Dominic plated the pasta and set it before her. I think she sees you. I think she knows exactly how talented you are. The simple statement, delivered without drama or excessive sentiment, touched something deep in Amaya. Her eyes filled unexpectedly. Try it, he said, indicating the pasta. Tell me what I did wrong. Grateful for the change of subject, Amaya tasted the dish. Too much garlic, not enough salt, and you overcooked the pasta by about 30 seconds. He laughed. See? Terrible chef. Not terrible, she corrected. Just inexperienced. Cooking is like any skill. It takes practice. They ate together, conversation flowing easily. Dominic told her about building his aviation company from scratch, about the risks he'd taken and the failures he'd overcome. There was something comforting about his confidence, not arrogance, but the quiet assurance of someone who knew his own worth. What about family? She asked. Are your parents still around? A shadow crossed his face. My father is. We're not close. He wanted me to join his law firm. Didn't approve when I went my own way. And your mother? She died when I was in college, cancer. His voice was matter-of-fact, but Amaya sensed old pain beneath the words. I'm sorry, she said simply. He nodded acknowledgement. Family is complicated. Yes, it is. After dinner, they moved to his living room with glasses of wine. The city lights glittered below them like stars. You remind me of her sometimes, Amaya said softly. Who? My grandmother. She was fearless too. Direct. She always said exactly what she meant. Dominic smiled. I'll take that as a high compliment. It is. Amaya took a sip of wine. She would have liked you. And what about you, Amaya Rivers? Do you like me? The directness of the question made her laugh. I'm still deciding. Fair enough. He set down his glass. For what it's worth, I like you very much. Not just your cooking, you. The words hung in the air between them, honest and unadorned. In that moment, Amaya realized how unused she was to such straightforward emotion. In the kitchen, everything was clear. Recipes, techniques, results. But relationships had always been messier, harder to navigate. I should go, she said, setting down her glass. It's getting late. He didn't try to convince her to stay, just called for a car to take her home. As they waited in the lobby of his building, Amaya made a decision. I want to do it, she said. The restaurant. I want to try. His expression brightened. You're sure? No, she admitted with a small laugh. I'm terrified, but I'll never forgive myself if I don't at least try. You won't regret it, he promised, and you won't be doing it alone. The car arrived, and he walked her out. Before she got in, he took her hand gently. Thank you for trusting me, he said softly. Don't make me regret it, she replied, only half joking. I won't. As the car pulled away, Amaya felt a mixture of excitement and fear. She was leaping into the unknown, putting her trust in a man she barely knew. But something told her Dominic Vance was a man who kept his promises. The next 6 weeks passed in a whirlwind. After consulting with a lawyer, whom Dominic paid for, Amaya signed the partnership agreement. She gave notice at Skyline, enduring Marcus's cold fury and thinly veiled threats. Word spread quickly through Seattle's restaurant community that Amaya Rivers, a name few had heard before, was opening her own place with backing from Dominic Vance. The space at Pike Place was gutted and redesigned. Amaya insisted on keeping the open kitchen, but wanted the dining room to feel warm and inviting, not sterile and fancy like so many high-end restaurants. People should feel the food, not just taste it, she explained to the designer. I want them comfortable enough to close their eyes when they eat, to really experience the flavors. Dominic was involved, but not overbearing. He handled the business aspects, permits, licenses, insurance, while giving Amaya full control of the menu and kitchen design. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side during the day and often sharing dinner in the evenings, testing recipes and discussing ideas for the restaurant. Amaya found herself looking forward to these quiet moments, when Dominic would listen intently as she explained the history behind a dish or the technique that made it special. What will you call it? He asked one evening, as they sat among paint samples and fabric swatches in the half-finished space. Amaya had been thinking about this question for weeks. Rivers, she said finally. Simple, personal, perfect, he agreed. Like you. She rolled her eyes at the compliment, but secretly it pleased her. In the weeks they'd been working together, Dominic had been unfailingly supportive but never pushy about his feelings. He made no secret of his attraction to her, but he respected the boundaries she set, focusing on the restaurant. 2 weeks before opening, disaster struck. Amaya arrived at the restaurant to find water pouring from the ceiling. A pipe had burst overnight, damaging much of the newly installed equipment and ruining the just-completed floors. She called Dominic in a panic. Everything's destroyed. We'll have to push back the opening. He arrived 20 minutes later, surveyed the damage and immediately started making calls. By afternoon, restoration crews were working and new equipment was being expedited. We'll still open on time, he assured her. It's just a setback, not a disaster. His calm confidence steadied her. How do you do that? She asked. Do what? Handle crises like they're nothing. He shrugged. Practice. When you've faced enough problems, you learn that most can be solved with money, connections, or perseverance, sometimes all three. That evening, exhausted and discouraged, Amaya accepted Dominic's invitation to dinner at his apartment. He cooked again. Better this time, she noted with approval. You've been practicing, she said. I have a good teacher. After dinner, as they sat looking out at the city, Dominic turned to her. There's something I need to tell you. Her stomach tightened. Whenever conversations started this way, bad news followed. Marcus has been talking to restaurant critics, he said, telling them you're difficult to work with, that you stole recipes from Skyline. Amaya closed her eyes briefly. I knew he'd try something. It won't work, Dominic assured her. I've invited every major critic and food blogger to the opening. They'll taste your food and know the truth. And if they believe him, if they come with negative expectations, then we'll prove him wrong dish by dish. He took her hand. I believe in you, Amaya. Your food speaks for itself. His confidence in her was unwavering. In the weeks they'd worked together, he'd seen her at her worst, stressed, snapping orders, obsessing over details, and still, he looked at her like she was something precious. Why me? She asked suddenly. You could have invested in any chef in Seattle. Why pick someone no one had heard of? He considered the question carefully. Because when I tasted your food, I tasted truth. There's no pretension in your cooking, no showing off, just honest emotion and perfect technique. He looked into her eyes. It's rare to find someone who puts their whole heart into anything. You do that with every dish you create. The sincerity in his voice touched something deep inside her. For years, Amaya had poured herself into food that other people claimed as their own. Now, for the first time, someone not only recognized her talent, but valued it, valued her. Without thinking, she leaned forward and kissed him. He responded immediately, one hand coming up to cup her face gently. The kiss was like his words, direct, honest, without pretense. When they pulled apart, Amaya felt slightly breathless. I've been wanting to do that for weeks, Dominic admitted, his voice low. What took you so long? She teased. I was waiting for you to be ready. He brushed a curl from her face. I didn't want you to think the restaurant was conditional. I never thought that, she said truthfully. He kissed her again, more deeply this time. Amaya felt herself responding, drawn to his warmth and strength. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Stay tonight, he murmured. She pulled back slightly, meeting his gaze. Dominic, just to sleep, he clarified. It's late, you're exhausted, and I have a perfectly good guest room. Relief and something like disappointment mingled in her chest. I should go home. Big day tomorrow. He nodded, not pushing. I'll call you a car. As she rode home through the quiet streets, Amaya touched her lips, still feeling his kiss. She was falling for Dominic Vance. His directness, his confidence, his unwavering support. It terrified her. The last time she had opened her heart to someone, he had left when things got difficult. And things with the restaurant were about to get very difficult indeed. Opening night loomed just 2 weeks away. Critics were booked. Investors would be watching. And somewhere out there, Marcus was spreading rumors trying to ensure her failure. Amaya's phone chimed with a text from Dominic. Sweet dreams. Tomorrow is another day closer to your dream coming true. She smiled in the darkness of the car. Whatever happened with the restaurant, whatever happened between them, Dominic Vance had already given her something precious, belief in herself. For the first time in years, Amaya Rivers was cooking under her own name, and it felt right. The week before Rivers was set to open, Amaya barely slept. She spent 18 hours a day in the kitchen, training staff, perfecting recipes, and obsessing over every detail. Dominic stayed by her side, handling everything else, phone calls, deliveries, paperwork, allowing her to focus solely on the food. You need to rest, he told her late one night as she tested a sauce for the 5th time. You won't be at your best if you're exhausted. I can't rest, she replied, adding a pinch more salt to the pot. Everything has to be perfect. It already is perfect, he insisted. Your food is extraordinary. You're extraordinary. She shook her head, but smiled at his words. Over the past weeks they had grown closer, sharing meals, ideas, and occasional kisses. But Amaya had kept a certain distance, focusing on the restaurant, not ready to dive into a relationship, while so much else was changing in her life. Go home, Dominic said, gently taking the spoon from her hand. Get some sleep. Tomorrow is our final test run. The test run was a private dinner for 20 friends and family, a dress rehearsal before the official opening. Amaya had invited a few former colleagues from culinary school, and Dominic had invited business associates and friends. What if it's not ready? She asked quietly. What if I'm not ready? He turned her to face him, his hands warm on her shoulders. Amaya Rivers, you've been ready for this your entire life. Trust yourself the way I trust you. His confidence bolstered her as it always did. She nodded, allowing him to call a car to take her home. The next morning, Amaya arrived at the restaurant to find a delivery man waiting outside with a large package. Delivery for Chef Rivers, he said. Inside the box was a beautiful set of hand-forged Japanese knives, each one perfect for specific tasks in the kitchen. The note read simply, "Tools worthy of your hands, D." Tears sprang to her eyes. The knives were the kind she had admired in culinary magazines, but could never afford on a line cook's salary. That Dominic had noticed, remembered, and understood what they would mean to her touched her deeply. When he arrived an hour later, she met him at the door and threw her arms around him. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. "They're perfect." He held her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "You're welcome." That evening, the test dinner went flawlessly. Amaya's menu, a combination of elevated comfort food and innovative techniques, earned raves from everyone present. "This is the best meal I've had in Seattle," declared Richard Morton, a businessman friend of Dominic's. "Better than anything at Skyline." Amaya, who had finally emerged from the kitchen after the dessert course, blushed at the praise. "Thank you. He's right," added another guest. "The way you balance flavors is remarkable." As the guests mingled and chatted, Dominic slipped his arm around Amaya's waist. "See, I told you, they love it." She leaned into him slightly, allowing herself to enjoy the moment. "It went well," she admitted. "It went better than well. It was perfect." Later, as the last guests departed, Amaya and Dominic sat at the bar with glasses of champagne. "To Rivers," he said, raising his glass, "and to the incredible woman who made it happen." "To us," she corrected, clinking her glass against his. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," he said seriously. "Maybe not as quickly, but you would have found a way. That's who you are, Amaya. You make things happen." She shook her head, smiling. "How do you always know exactly what to say to make me feel better? It's not about saying the right thing, it's about saying what I really think." He set down his glass and took her hand. "And I think you're the most remarkable woman I've ever met." The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. Over the weeks they'd been working together, Amaya had felt herself falling for Dominic, his unwavering support, his quiet strength, his belief in her. But she'd held back, afraid of mixing business with pleasure, afraid of losing focus on the restaurant. Now, with opening night just days away, she felt those walls crumbling. "Dominic," she began, but was interrupted by her phone ringing. She glanced at the screen. "It's Tanya from Skyline. I should take this." He nodded, releasing her hand. "Tanya, what's up?" Amaya listened, her expression growing serious. "He said what? Are you sure?" Another pause. "Thanks for telling me. Yes, I'll see you at the opening." She hung up, her earlier elation fading. "What's wrong?" Dominic asked. "Marcus. He's been telling people that my recipes are actually his, that I stole them from Skyline. He's claiming I signed a non-compete agreement that prevents me from using similar dishes." Dominic's jaw tightened. "Did you sign anything like that?" "No, never. But he's saying I did, and that he'll sue the restaurant if we open with my menu." "Empty threats," Dominic said, his voice hard. "He's trying to scare you. We have all our legal bases covered. What if people believe him? What if the critics come expecting to find stolen recipes? Then they'll be disappointed, because your food is uniquely yours." He squeezed her hand. "Don't let him get in your head, Amaya. That's exactly what he wants." She tried to take comfort in his words, but worry had taken root. Marcus was well connected in Seattle's restaurant scene. His lies could do real damage. "Maybe I should change the menu," she said. "Create all new dishes for opening night." "Absolutely not," Dominic replied firmly. "Your menu is perfect as it is. We're not going to let him bully you into changing anything." His confidence steadied her, as it always did. "You're right. I'm not going to let him win. That's my girl," he said softly, and the simple phrase warmed her heart despite her worries. The days before opening night passed in a blur of final preparations. Amaya worked around the clock, drilling her kitchen staff until every dish was perfect, every plate presentation consistent. Dominic handled the front of house, training servers on the menu and wine pairings, making sure everything ran smoothly. The night before the opening, Amaya stayed late alone in the kitchen, double-checking inventory and prepping what she could in advance. The restaurant was quiet, the dining room set, and waiting for tomorrow's guests. She heard the door open and looked up to see Dominic. "I thought you'd gone home," she said. "I wanted to check on you." He came to stand beside her at the prep table. "How are you feeling about tomorrow?" "Terrified," she admitted. "Excited, nauseous, all of the above." He smiled. "That sounds about right for the night before a dream comes true." "What if it fails?" she asked, voicing her deepest fear. "What if no one comes, or they hate the food, or Marcus's rumors work and everyone thinks I'm a fraud?" "First of all, that won't happen," he said confidently. "But even if it did, even in the worst-case scenario, you would still be Amaya Rivers, the most talented chef I've ever met, and I would still be right here beside you." His words touched something deep inside her, All her life, Amaya had faced challenges alone. Her grandmother had been supportive, but couldn't shield her from the realities of being a black woman in a field dominated by white men. In culinary school, in professional kitchens, she had learned to fight her own battles, to prove herself over and over again. But Dominic wasn't trying to fight her battles for her. He was simply standing with her, believing in her when she struggled to believe in herself. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." He reached out, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. "You don't have to thank me. Just keep cooking. Keep sharing your gift with the world." The tenderness in his voice, in his touch, broke through the last of her resistance. Amaya stepped forward, closing the distance between them, and kissed him. Not a brief kiss like before, but a deep, honest expression of everything she'd been holding back. Dominic responded immediately, his arms encircling her, pulling her close. There was hunger in his kiss, but also reverence, as if she were something precious he'd been waiting for all his life. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that properly since the first night I tasted your food," he confessed. "What took you so long?" she teased, echoing her words from weeks before. "I was waiting for you to be ready," he replied simply. And she was ready. Ready to trust him, ready to let him into her life completely. The restaurant, their partnership, his unwavering support, all of it had shown her that Dominic Vance was a man worth trusting with her heart. "Stay with me tonight," she whispered. His eyes darkened. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." That night, in Dominic's apartment high above the city, Amaya finally let down all her walls. Their lovemaking was like her cooking, passionate, honest, uninhibited. Afterward, lying in his arms, she felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "That I'm happy," she replied truthfully. "Scared about tomorrow, but happy right now." He kissed her forehead. "Tomorrow will be perfect. And so will the day after that and the day after that." She smiled at his confidence. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I know you," he said simply, "and I know that whatever challenges come, you'll face them with the same passion and skill you bring to everything else." Wrapped in his warmth and certainty, Amaya finally slept, the anxieties of opening night temporarily forgotten. Morning came too quickly. Amaya woke with a start, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings before remembering where she was and what day it was. "Opening day," she breathed. Beside her, Dominic stirred. "Good morning, chef," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. Ready to change the Seattle food scene forever, his confidence made her smile despite her nerves. "Let's find out." They arrived at the restaurant early. The kitchen staff would be arriving soon, and there were hours of prep work ahead before the 5 p.m. opening. As Dominic unlocked the door, Amaya's phone rang. "Hello, is this Amaya Rivers?" asked an unfamiliar male voice. "Yes, this is she." "Ms. Rivers, this is James Wilton from the Seattle Times. I'm scheduled to review your restaurant tonight." Amaya's heart raced. The Seattle Times was the city's most influential paper. Their review could make or break a new restaurant. "Yes, Mr. Wilton, we're looking forward to having you. I wanted to give you the courtesy of a call," he continued. "I've heard some concerning things about your departure from Skyline and wanted to get your side of the story before I come in." Amaya's stomach dropped. "What kind of things?" "Allegations that you've taken proprietary recipes from your former employer, that you're in violation of a non-compete agreement. I've spoken with Marcus Bennett, who was quite adamant about these claims." She gripped the phone tightly. "None of that is true, Mr. Wilton. I never signed a non-compete, and my recipes are my own, inspired by my grandmother's cooking and my own experiences. Marcus Bennett has been taking credit for my work for years." There was a pause. "That's quite an allegation." "It's the truth," she said firmly. "Come tonight. Taste the food. You'll see that it speaks for itself." "I intend to," he replied, "and I'll be keeping an open mind. Thank you for your time, Ms. Rivers." When she hung up, her hands were shaking. Dominic, who had been watching her face during the call, pulled her into his arms. "Marcus," he guessed. She nodded against his chest. "He's been talking to James Wilton from the Seattle Times, making accusations." Dominic's body tensed. "That son of a—" "It's okay," she interrupted, pulling back to look at him. "Wilton said he'd keep an open mind, and once he tastes the food, he'll know." "Damn right he will," Dominic said fiercely. "Your food speaks for itself." The kitchen soon filled with activity as the staff arrived. Amaya threw herself into prep work, focusing on the food rather than her fears. By late afternoon, everything was ready. The dining room gleamed, tables set with simple but elegant place settings. The kitchen hummed with anticipation. An hour before opening, Amaya gathered her staff. "Tonight is the beginning of something special," she told them. "Not just a restaurant, but a place where food tells stories, where every dish has meaning. I'm proud of what we've created here, and I'm grateful to each of you for being part of it." The servers and kitchen staff applauded, their excitement palpable. "Now let's show Seattle what we can do," she finished. As the first guests began to arrive, Amaya took her position in the open kitchen. From there, she could see the dining room filling up. Every table had been booked weeks in advance, thanks to Dominic's connections and the buzz that had been building around the opening. The first orders came in, and the kitchen leapt into action. Amaya called out instructions, moving between stations, checking each plate before it left the kitchen. Despite the pressure, she felt calm, centered. This was what she was born to do. From her vantage point, she saw James Wilton arrive, recognizing him from his photo on the Seattle Times website. He was seated at a table with a clear view of the kitchen. Minutes later, her heart nearly stopped when she spotted Marcus entering the restaurant, accompanied by a woman she didn't recognize. Dominic, who had been overseeing the dining room, immediately noticed her reaction and followed her gaze. His expression hardened when he saw Marcus. "I'll handle this," he said, moving toward the front of the restaurant. Amaya couldn't hear their conversation, but she saw Dominic speaking to the host, who then approached Marcus. Words were exchanged, Marcus's face growing red with anger. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Marcus and his companion turned and left. When Dominic returned to the kitchen, Amaya raised an eyebrow in question. "I simply informed him that we were fully booked," Dominic explained, "and that even if we weren't, we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone who has publicly defamed the chef." Despite the tension of the moment, Amaya smiled. "My hero. Always," he replied with a wink. The evening progressed smoothly. From the kitchen, Amaya could see diners closing their eyes in pleasure as they tasted her food, could hear the hum of satisfied conversation, the occasional exclamation of delight. Wilton seemed to be enjoying his meal, taking notes between courses, occasionally watching the kitchen with thoughtful eyes. Near the end of service, when most diners had finished their main courses and were contemplating dessert, the door opened again. This time an elderly black woman entered, leaning on a cane, accompanied by a younger woman who resembled her. Amaya froze. "It can't be," she whispered, but it was. Aunt Pearl, her grandmother's sister, whom she hadn't seen in years, had somehow found her way to Seattle to Rivers on opening night. Dominic appeared at her side. "Is everything okay?" "That's my great-aunt," Amaya said, her voice thick with emotion. "My grandmother's sister. I haven't seen her since the funeral. I'll seat them personally," he said, squeezing her hand before heading to the front. Amaya watched as Dominic greeted Aunt Pearl warmly, escorting her and her companion to a table near the kitchen. He spoke with them briefly, then returned to Amaya. "She says she saw an article about the restaurant opening online," he explained. "She and your cousin flew in this morning to surprise you." Tears pricked Amaya's eyes. "She's the only family I have left." "Go," he urged. "Say hello. We've got the kitchen covered for a few minutes." Wiping her hands on her apron, Amaya stepped out of the kitchen for the first time that evening. As she approached the table, Aunt Pearl looked up, her face breaking into a wide smile. "There she is," the older woman said, opening her arms. "The chef herself." Amaya bent to embrace her, inhaling the familiar scent of rosewater that brought back a flood of memories. "Aunt Pearl," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I can't believe you're here." "Did you think I'd miss this?" Pearl replied, patting her cheek. "Your grandmother would be so proud, baby girl, so proud." The simple words, spoken with such certainty, washed away all of Amaya's lingering doubts. In that moment, surrounded by the restaurant she had created with Dominic watching proudly from a distance and her great-aunt beaming up at her, Amaya Rivers felt complete. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means everything to me." "Now," Pearl said, her eyes twinkling, "I hear you make a ravioli that changes lives. I'd like to try it for myself." Amaya laughed, wiping away a tear. "Coming right up." As she returned to the kitchen to prepare the dish personally, she caught Dominic's eye across the room. He smiled at her, a smile full of pride and something deeper, something that looked remarkably like love. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Marcus's accusations, critics' reviews, the daily struggles of running a restaurant, Amaya knew she could face them. She had found her voice, her place in the world, and she had found Dominic, a man who saw her clearly, and loved what he saw. The rest of service passed in a blur of activity. By the time the last diners departed, Amaya was exhausted but exhilarated. The staff gathered for a celebratory toast, everyone riding the high of a successful opening night. "To Chef Rivers," said Miguel, her sous chef, raising his glass, "for giving us the chance to be part of something special." "To all of you," Amaya countered, including everyone in her toast, "for making tonight perfect." After the staff left, Amaya and Dominic sat at the bar as they had the night before. "We did it," she said, still not quite believing it. "You did it," he corrected. "I just helped with the details." She shook her head. "No, we did it together." "I couldn't have done this without you, Dominic." He took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to." As they sat in comfortable silence, Amaya's phone chimed with a notification. She picked it up and gasped. "What is it?" Dominic asked. "The Seattle Times just posted Wilton's review online," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. "I can't look." Dominic took the phone gently from her hands. "Want me to read it?" She nodded, closing her eyes. "Rivers, a culinary revelation," he read. "In a city saturated with fine dining options, it takes something extraordinary to stand out. Chef Amaya Rivers has created exactly that with her new restaurant in Pike Place Market." Amaya's eyes flew open. "Really?" Dominic continued reading, his smile growing. "Each dish tells a story, of heritage, of passion, of a chef who understands that great food should do more than satisfy hunger. It should touch the soul. The oxtail ravioli alone is worth the visit, a perfect balance of rustic comfort and technical brilliance." Tears of relief and joy filled Amaya's eyes as Dominic read the rest of the glowing review. Wilton had given Rivers a rare 5-star rating, calling it an instant classic, and the most exciting restaurant opening in Seattle this year. "He loved it," she whispered. "Of course he did," Dominic said, setting down the phone to pull her into his arms. "Everyone loved it. How could they not?" As he held her, Amaya felt a weight lifting, the weight of doubt, of fear, of years spent hiding in someone else's shadow. Tonight, she had stepped into the light under her own name, and the world had embraced her. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Dominic pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. Now we celebrate. Tomorrow, we do it all again, and the day after that, and the day after that." "Together?" she asked. "Together," he confirmed, his voice filled with promise. Every step of the way, as they locked up the restaurant and stepped into the cool Seattle night, Amaya's heart was full. Rivers was more than just a restaurant. It was her declaration to the world, her grandmother's legacy, her future with Dominic, and it was only just beginning. What neither of them noticed as they walked hand in hand to Dominic's waiting car was the figure watching from across the street. Marcus Bennett stood in the shadows, his face twisted with anger as he watched their happiness. "Enjoy it while it lasts," he muttered, pulling out his phone to make a call. "This isn't over, not by a long shot." In the weeks following opening night, Rivers became the hottest reservation in Seattle. Inspired by James Wilton's glowing review, other critics flocked to the restaurant, each leaving equally impressed. Social media buzzed with photos of Amaya's dishes, particularly the famous oxtail ravioli that had first caught Dominic's attention. Success brought its own challenges. Amaya worked 14-hour days, perfecting dishes, training staff, and greeting customers who increasingly asked to meet the chef they'd read so much about. Dominic stayed by her side, managing the business aspects and supporting her in any way he could. Their relationship deepened amid the chaos. They barely had time alone together, but the moments they stole, early mornings sharing coffee in Dominic's apartment, late nights counting receipts at the restaurant bar, were filled with a quiet intimacy that sustained them both. "You should move in with me," Dominic suggested one morning as they rushed to get ready for another busy day. "You barely use your apartment anymore, and mine is closer to the restaurant." Amaya paused, toothbrush in hand. "Are you sure? It's only been a few months." "I've never been more sure of anything," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind and meeting her eyes in the bathroom mirror. "I love you, Amaya Rivers. I think I've loved you since that first bite of ravioli." It was the first time he'd said those words. Amaya turned in his arms, her heart full. "I love you too," she replied softly, "and yes, I'll move in with you." The simple exchange marked another milestone in their journey together. That evening, they shared the news with the restaurant staff, who cheered and teased them good-naturedly. "About time," said Miguel, her sous chef. "We were all wondering when you two would make it official." The next morning, Amaya arrived at the restaurant early to prepare for a special event, a charity dinner benefiting culinary scholarships for underprivileged youth. As she unlocked the door, she noticed something strange. The alarm hadn't been set, and lights were on in the kitchen. Cautiously, she entered, wondering if one of the staff had forgotten to lock up properly the night before. What she found instead made her blood run cold. The kitchen was in shambles. Refrigerator doors stood open, food strewn across the floor. Equipment had been damaged, knives bent or broken, and spray-painted across the wall behind her prep station were the words "fraud" and "thief." Amaya stood frozen, unable to process the destruction before her. Her beautiful kitchen, her sanctuary, had been violated, and the specific nature of the vandalism, targeting her reputation, not just the restaurant, made the perpetrator obvious. With shaking hands, she called Dominic, who arrived 20 minutes later with the police. As officers photographed the damage and took her statement, Dominic held her close, his body tense with barely controlled anger. "It was Marcus," she said quietly. "It has to be." "The police will investigate," Dominic replied. "If it was him, they'll find evidence." "The charity dinner," Amaya remembered suddenly. "It's tonight. We have 60 people coming. What are we going to do?" Dominic looked around at the destruction, then back at her with determination in his eyes. "We're going to clean up and cook. We're not going to let him win." He was already on his phone, calling in the entire staff early, arranging for emergency equipment deliveries, contacting their suppliers for replacement ingredients. By the time the staff began arriving, Dominic had a plan in place. "This is a setback," he told the assembled team, "not a defeat. We have 8 hours until the charity dinner. If we work together, we can make it happen." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Everyone pitched in. Servers scrubbing walls, line cooks sorting through ingredients to see what could be salvaged. Even regular customers who heard about the vandalism showed up to help. Competing restaurants sent over supplies and offered to loan equipment. In the midst of the chaos, Amaya found her focus. She revised the menu on the fly, adapting to the ingredients and equipment they had available. There was no time for doubt or fear, only action. By 6 o'clock that evening, the kitchen was functional again. It wasn't perfect. Some equipment was still missing, and the wall had been hastily painted to cover the graffiti, but they were ready to serve. The charity dinner guests arrived, unaware of the day's drama, and the service began. Amaya worked with a fierce determination, refusing to let the attack derail her. The new menu, simpler but no less delicious, was a hit. At the end of the night, exhausted but triumphant, Amaya addressed the diners, explaining what had happened and thanking them for their support. "Today reminded me why I became a chef," she told them. "Not for recognition or praise, but to create something that brings people together. The food we served tonight came from the heart, from my team's heart and mine. Thank you for being part of our journey." The room erupted in applause. As the guests departed, many stopped to thank her personally, leaving extra donations for the scholarship fund and promising to return to Rivers soon. When the last guest had gone, Amaya sank into a chair, the adrenaline that had carried her through the day finally fading. "You were amazing," Dominic said, sitting beside her and taking her hand. "I don't know how you pulled that off." "We pulled it off," she corrected. "All of us together." He nodded, then grew serious. "The police called while you were saying goodbye to the guests. They found security camera footage from across the street. It was Marcus, along with 2 others they haven't identified yet. They're looking for him now." Amaya closed her eyes briefly. "I knew it was him. I just don't understand why he hates me so much." "Because you're everything he pretends to be," Dominic said simply. "A real artist, a true chef. He spent years taking credit for other people's work, and you've exposed that by succeeding on your own." The next morning, they learned that Marcus had been arrested, along with 2 line cooks from Skyline, who had helped him vandalize Rivers. The story made the local news, with reporters camped outside the restaurant hoping for a statement. "You don't have to talk to them," Dominic told her. "The police have what they need for charges." But Amaya shook her head. "No, I want to. Not to gloat, but to show everyone that we're still standing." She stepped outside to face the cameras, Dominic at her side. "Last night, Rivers was vandalized in an attempt to damage not just our property, but our reputation," she said calmly. "Today, we're open for business as usual, because great food isn't about fancy kitchens or expensive equipment. It's about heart and skill and passion, and those things can't be destroyed by vandalism." The statement earned her even more public support. Reservations, already hard to get, became nearly impossible. Food magazines requested interviews, and a national cooking show invited her to appear as a guest judge. Through it all, Dominic remained her rock, handling the business side so she could focus on cooking, supporting her when the pressure became overwhelming, loving her through success and setbacks alike. 6 months after opening night, as they prepared for River's first holiday season, Dominic surprised Amaya with news. "Skyline is for sale," he told her one morning over coffee. "Marcus's arrest and the publicity around it have hurt their business. The owners want out." Amaya considered this. "That's a shame for the staff. Most of them are good people." "I was thinking we might buy it," Dominic said casually. She nearly choked on her coffee. "What? Why would we want Skyline?" "Not to run it as is," he explained. "To transform it. We could create a more casual concept, a place that showcases your comfort food side rather than the fine dining we do at Rivers. Different market, different price point, but still your incredible flavors." The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. 2 restaurants? I can barely keep up with one. "You wouldn't have to run both kitchens yourself," he said. "Miguel is ready to step up. He could be head chef there, with you as executive chef overseeing both places. You've trained him well." Amaya had to admit Miguel had grown tremendously in the past months, often running the Rivers kitchen when she was pulled into the dining room to meet guests or give interviews. "It's a lot to think about," she said. "It's just an idea," Dominic replied. "No pressure. But I believe in you, Amaya. You have so much to give the world beyond what you're already doing at Rivers." His faith in her abilities never wavered, even when her own confidence faltered. It was one of the many things she loved about him, his absolute certainty that she could achieve whatever she set her mind to. That night, after service, Dominic had another surprise. He took her up to the roof of the restaurant, where he had set up a small table with candles and flowers. "What's this?" she asked, smiling. "Just a quiet moment for us," he said, pulling out her chair. "We've been so busy lately. I wanted some time alone with the woman I love." They ate a simple meal he had prepared himself. His cooking skills had improved considerably under her tutelage, and talked about the future. "I've been thinking about what you said," Amaya told him, "about Skyline. Maybe we should do it." He looked surprised. "Really? I thought you'd need more convincing." "I've been playing it safe for so long," she explained, "hiding in other people's kitchens, afraid to put my name on anything. You helped me break that pattern with Rivers. Maybe it's time to be even bolder." His smile warmed her more than the heat lamps he'd set up against the December chill. "You continue to amaze me, Amaya Rivers." "I'm amazing myself these days," she admitted with a laugh. "A year ago, I never would have imagined any of this. The restaurant, us, even considering a second location. Life has a way of surprising us," he agreed, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Speaking of surprises," he placed a small velvet box on the table between them. Amaya's breath caught as she realized what it might be. "Dominic, I had a whole speech prepared," he said, his voice suddenly nervous, "about how you've changed my life with your food and your love, about how I want to spend the rest of my days with you, supporting your dreams and building a life together." He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. But all those words boiled down to one question. "Amaya Rivers, will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes as she looked at the man who had believed in her from the first bite of her food, who had seen her potential and helped her realize it, who had stood beside her through triumph and disaster. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, snow began to fall gently around them. The first snowfall of the season, dusting the Seattle skyline with white. "Perfect timing," Dominic said with a smile. "Perfect everything," she replied, leaning across the table to kiss him. 3 months later, Amaya stood in the kitchen of what had once been Skyline, now transformed into Grandmother's Table, a restaurant dedicated to elevated comfort food, inspired by her grandmother's recipes. Miguel moved confidently through the space, directing his new staff, occasionally looking to Amaya for approval. "You've taught him well," Dominic said, coming to stand beside her. "He's ready." She nodded, watching her protégé with pride. "Yes, he is." The grand opening was scheduled for the following week, coinciding with their wedding the day before. It was a hectic time, but Amaya wouldn't have had it any other way. "Your grandmother would be proud," came a familiar voice behind them. Amaya turned to see Aunt Pearl, who had relocated to Seattle after her surprise visit on River's opening night. At 75, Pearl had become a fixture at the restaurant, often sitting at the chef's table sharing stories of Amaya's grandmother with delighted customers. "I hope so," Amaya said, embracing her great-aunt. I know so, Pearl insisted. She always said you had magic in your hands. Now the whole world knows it too. That evening, after the final preparations for grandmother's table were complete, Amaya and Dominic returned to Rivers for dinner service. As had become their custom, they sat at the bar after closing, reflecting on the day. 1 year ago I was anonymous in someone else's kitchen, Amaya mused. Now I have 2 restaurants, a James Beard nomination, and I'm about to get married. Quite a year, Dominic agreed, taking her hand. And it all started with ravioli, she said with a smile. It started with you, he corrected. The ravioli was just my good fortune. As they sat together, planning their future, Amaya felt a sense of completeness she had never known before. She had found her voice as a chef, stepping out of the shadows to claim her rightful place. She had created not just restaurants but communities, places where food told stories and brought people together. And she had found Dominic, who had tasted not just her food, but her soul, and had loved both equally. The wedding was small and intimate, held in the dining room of Rivers with only close friends and family present. Amaya wore a simple cream dress, her curls adorned with tiny white flowers. Dominic couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked toward him, her face glowing with happiness. Today I promise to always believe in you, even when you doubt yourself, he said in his vows, to support your dreams, to celebrate your successes, and to stand by you through every challenge. I promise to love not just who you are, but who you're becoming, and I promise to thank my lucky stars every day that I ordered that ravioli. Laughter mingled with tears among the guests. Amaya took a deep breath before speaking her own vows. Dominic, you saw me when I was invisible. You tasted my food and knew my heart. You gave me courage when I was afraid and strength when I faltered. Today, I promise to cook for you every day of our lives, not just with ingredients, but with love. I promise to create a life with you that's as rich and complex and satisfying as the best meal, and I promise that no matter what happens, you will always be my favorite flavor. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, applause erupted from their friends and family. Miguel popped champagne and the celebration began. The next day, with barely a pause to catch their breath, they opened grandmother's table to immediate success. The more casual concept attracted families and younger diners who couldn't afford Rivers but wanted to experience Amaya's cooking. At the end of that whirlwind week, Dominic surprised Amaya with one more gift. As she collapsed onto their couch, exhausted but happy, he handed her a beautifully wrapped package. "What's this?" she asked. "We agreed no wedding gifts." "This isn't exactly a wedding gift," he said. "Open it." Inside was a handwritten recipe book bound in soft leather. The title page read, "Rivers, a collection by the chef who changed my life." Amaya ran her fingers over the embossed cover. "You made this? I collected all your original recipes, the ones from Rivers, the new ones for grandmother's table, even some you've just talked about but haven't created yet. I thought you might want to preserve them for the future." Inside the front cover he had written, "The world now knows your name, but I'm content just whispering it in private, every day for the rest of our lives." Tears filled her eyes as she looked up at the man who had changed everything for her. "Thank you. For this. For believing in me. For everything." He sat beside her, pulling her close. "Just keep cooking, Amaya Rivers Vance. Keep sharing your gift with the world. That's all the thanks I need." As they sat together, planning menus and dreaming of the future, Amaya knew that whatever challenges came next, running 2 restaurants, starting a family someday, perhaps even writing a cookbook of her own, they would face them together. She had found her place in the world, not just as a chef, but as a woman who was finally seen and valued for exactly who she was. No longer hiding in someone else's shadow, she stood in her own light, creating food that told her story to anyone willing to taste it. And it had all begun with a single bite of ravioli, when a man who had everything tasted something he'd never had before, the flavor of honesty, of passion, of a woman who poured her heart into every dish she created. He had come for the food. He had stayed for the woman who made it. And together, they had created a recipe for happiness that would last a lifetime. As the Seattle night deepened around them, Amaya and Dominic sat contentedly in the home they now shared, the recipe book open between them, planning not just menus but a future filled with flavor, with challenge, with love. And somewhere Amaya was certain her grandmother was smiling. The end.